kind of an example on how an index strategy works versus having your money actually in the S&P. Now, how indexing works is that your money is usually lodged in a safe place, say with a highly rated life insurance company, but it's actually tied to the market like the S&P in this example. Now, when the market tanks, as we experienced in 2008, you don't lose in an indexed account. You have a guaranteed floor of, we're going to say 0% for this example. But when the market goes up in value, you get to experience all that growth up to a cap of, we'll use 15% in this illustration. So also in this example, we'll be using a yearly point-to-point strategy with a link date of February 15th starting in 1999. And then we look at that same link date every year that follows. So again, with an indexing strategy, when the market goes up, you participate in that growth. When the market goes down, you don't lose because your money isn't in the market, it's just tied to the market and it has a floor. So let's look at this quick example. Okay, so in this illustration, we're going to say that we have $100,000 in the S&P and $100,000 in an index strategy, and then we'll compare the two. We're going to use an 11-year time span and say we invested it in February of 1999. So let's see what happens moving forward. Okay, in the first year, we see that both investments earned a 10% rate of return. So both are equal at about $110,000. Okay, so far so good. Let's go into year two. Okay, in year two, we see that the S&P starts to decline and experiences a 9% loss. Now, our index strategy, because of the guaranteed floor, didn't lose anything and our account value stayed the same. Year three shows another loss in the S&P, and in year four, the S&P sees its biggest loss so far, losing 24%. Now, if we zoom out here, while the S&P was falling these last 3 years, you'll notice that the index strategy did not lose, and it never will. In fact, the gains we locked in back in year one, about $10,000, are still there. This shows just how safe and powerful our index strategy is, and just how risky the, quote, traditional investment is. We'll see this in greater detail moving forward. So here, if we zoom back in here and go to year five, we see a big rebound. The S&P rose 36% while the index strategy was capped at 15%. Remember, it has that cap. But look at the difference. The S&P is still not even close to its starting point of $100,000, while the index strategy is outpacing the S&P by almost $35,000 in year five alone. So in year six, we see both investments get a 5% rate of return. And year seven shows about a 6.5% growth. And finally, our S&P example has broken even. It's come back to where we started, while the indexed account has nearly 40% more in account value. And year 8 shows a nearly 10% growth on both accounts, and year 9 shows a small 5.5% loss in the S&P. But in year 10, the stock market tanks and the S&P plummets to a 45% loss. This is our 2008 year. Once again, the indexed account did not lose. This shows the true strength of the index strategy. When you put your money in the market, especially in this post-9/11 world we sometimes call it, you just don't know what tomorrow brings, and the index strategy forever protects against that, so you can always sleep well at night. Now, if we go into year 11, our final year, you can see that the S&P rebounded with a very large gain of nearly 39%. Notice, though, that the 15% gain in our index strategy still posted a higher dollar amount return of $23,320 compared to a 38.7% gain on a much smaller amount in the S&P, which translates to only $22,620. So not only did we outpace the S&P in just interest in year 11, but look at our final values. What has the S&P done since the beginning of our example? It's lost about $18,000 from its $100,000 mark. It's down to $82,000. And what has our index strategy done? It's gained almost $80,000. So hope this helps. We use this indexing strategy all the time, and people who followed Missed Fortune principles during this economic recession did not lose any of their investment when the market fell in 2008, and now when the market's going back up, they'll participate in all that growth.